Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I just finished my about year-long journey and finished the Expanse, so I figured I'd go ahead and rank all of the novels and all of the novellas as well. I'm just going to go ahead and use a real simple tier list, each of them 5 through 1 star, and I'm just going to do them in publication order, so the order I read them in. And let's go ahead and start with Leviathan Wakes. So Leviathan Wakes was a disappointing book for me. I really came into this series with high expectations, and high expectations, you can really only get let down. But in creating this list, a little bit of a spoiler, this is actually my least favorite of the full-length books. It was an okay entry, but I had a lot of problems with it. The storytelling I didn't think was fantastic, and I can see why a lot of people are put off by this first book. Overall, I thought it was fine. It really wasn't anything special, so it did end up getting a 3-star ranking from me. Then we get our first novella, which is The Butcher of Anderson Station. And yeah, I think this is the kind of novella where if I had read it later on after I had spent more time with the characters, I would have cared more. But at the time, coming off an underwhelming experience with Leviathan Wakes, going straight into this novella, I wasn't really blown away by it. It wasn't bad though, and my kind of philosophy with novellas is if it's not bad and it's not anything special, it just ends up in that 3-star, which is kind of weird because it's a novella. I think this one in particular, they're actually all really short. All of the Expanse novellas are pretty short, but this one does go ahead and end up behind Leviathan Wakes. Next up, we have Caliban's War, which I think introduced 2 of my favorite characters. Well, I think Avasarala is in book 1. I'm having trouble remembering. I finished these books about a year ago on the exact introduction of those characters, but Bobby definitely gets introduced in this book, and those 2 are just 2 great characters. I thought the storyline here was a lot more interesting. Thinking back on this book, those characters just end up playing such a pivotal role that even at the time I enjoyed them, and now looking back, this book definitely is nice. I'm trying to think, the plot wise, it's fine. The mystery that kind of gets introduced into this book though is what really does it for me, and so I actually do end up giving this one a 4-star rating. Next up we have Drive, and Drive is I think this one's really short. I think it's like 7 pages or something like that, but just kind of expands the world and kind of it answers the question of how they have gotten to the level of propulsion they have in here. So once again, as a novella, nice, short, quick little, nope, you go in the back, 3 stars. Then another novella, Gods of Risk. This one is, just a little bit of Bobby backstory. And I think if I had spent more time with Bobby as a character and then got this novella, I would find it a little more interesting. But at this point, I don't even think I really liked her all that much yet. It was pretty early on in the story, so I was still kind of filling her out as a character, and actually pretty much all of the characters in the story until this point. I do think it is a better story than Drive, so I will put it above Drive. And actually thinking about it, I think I like it more than The Butcher of Anderson Station, so I'll go ahead and put it there for now. This is the book that actually I feel like really kick-started this series for me. I was still really lukewarm up until this point, and then we got Abaddon's Gate. It introduced a character who I really hated throughout this story, and I don't think I really ever forgave them even the role that they play in the rest of the series, keeping the spoiler free. She was really frustrating, and but this whole story, it becomes a little bit more expansive, and obviously this really kind of sets up what is going to happen with more of the series. It really opens up the world as a whole, and this is the book where I really started to like the characters. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I will put this one at the top of our 4 stars for now. Next up we got The Churn, and this is another novella where I think, looking back on it now, I probably appreciate it more than I did at the time of reading it. It being backstory on a character who I was just kind of starting to get there with the characters, where I started to care. I think it was a little bit too much too soon, and if I had read it later, I maybe would have appreciated it more. So looking back at it now, it's a good story, but it is still just a novella. That being said, I do think it's one of the better novellas, so we are going to bump it just behind Leviathan Wakes. Next up, we have, I'm gonna butcher the name, Caliban Burn. That's what we'll go with. I think this is actually you started seeing the ramp up with Abaddon's Gate, but this is the book that really set up the series and made it take that next step. This is the point where I was really committed to the series. Up until this point, I was like, I've kind of committed to it. I've read a couple books. It's decent, but I thought maybe this series just wouldn't be anything more than it was at that point, which was just kind of a basic good space opera. But this book really took it to the next level. It's kind of funny to say that about this book because in the grand scheme of things, the scope of the story that's going on, it's happening in a small place. It's not, I just called it a space opera, but it's not as wide-reaching as the actual story that's going on here, even though some of the components are massive and long-reaching. I also liked the villain in this story, which I think definitely helped it out. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to the top of our 4-star, if I can get this to, there we go. So yeah, that will be the top of our 4-star for now. Next up, we had Nemesis Games. This book, a lot of political maneuvering, and the scope of humanity and how humanity thinks of the galaxy kind of gets changed here with some of the events that are happening. So if you really like the political scheming, you'll probably really like this book. It was more of the good stuff in this book, after the previous one. So I'm going to go ahead and put it just behind. I don't think it's as good, but I think it's still a really good entry. And if you do like the political scheming, you're definitely going to probably like it even more than I did. We're back to the novellas. We get the Vital Abyss. This is really kind of what happened to some characters, the consequences they're facing for some of the actions that they were a part of. And it kind of lays some breadcrumbs for some events that happen later on, which is what a lot of these novellas end up doing. They kind of show you some things that are happening in the world that aren't part of that main timeline with our main group, but are, still kind of important. Well, then, this actually becomes pretty important. But yeah, it was fine. Let's see, where am I going to rank this? I don't think it's as good as The Churn, but I do think it's better than Drive and The Butcher of Anderson Station. So we will go ahead and, Gods of Risk. The Vital Abyss, that feels right. Then we get to Babylon's Ashes, which for me was a big step down. I really thought the series was just hitting its stride, really getting the momentum. We just had 2 of the best books up until this point, the 2 best books of the series that were running everything. There's a lot of stuff going. We're getting big picture stuff. We're getting different political factions. Everything's going. And then we get Babylon's Ashes. And it was just a big step down for me. There was a lot of characters and a lot of them that I just didn't care about. I really cared about our main crew, but some of the ancillary I don't want to call them ancillary, but some of the other characters that we had slowly been introduced to in the last 2 books, I just didn't care. And we spent more time with them than I would have liked. It's still better than Leviathan Wakes, but it is not a 4-star. It is definitely a 3-star. So let's see, I said, yep, it is better than Leviathan Wakes for sure. So we'll go ahead and put it there. And that sounded really negative. It's not a bad book, but I think it might be kind of that disappointed aspect again. I was finally feeling the momentum building, and it just was a step back. It was still good, but sometimes you start to build and you really think we're going to get somewhere, and then that letdown I think maybe affected my rating a little bit there. It's by no means a bad book, so definitely deserves to get a 3-star. I did like it. I just wanted to clear that up because I sounded really negative there. Next up is Strange Dogs. Very interesting novella. I do really like this one. It's really good. It definitely sets up some really important things for the greater world that we get. And so, yeah, this is definitely so far the best of the novellas for sure. So we'll go ahead and put that in the 3 stars. After Strange Dogs, I was hopeful. And then reading Persepolis Rising, the first 75% of this book, did not like it. I didn't not like it, but it was just okay. But I wasn't in love with it. And I was really worried at this point. I was like, man, are they not going to be able to finish off this series that I've already committed a lot to? I mean, that's a lot to read, about halfway through this series. That's pretty long to all of a sudden just have it fall down my rankings and not look forward to reading it at all. Luckily, that last 25% was fantastic. It's some of the best in the Expanse, and that definitely saved probably the series for me. I probably would have taken a break. I wouldn't have DNF'd it because I had liked it enough until that point, but I probably would have taken a break from it. So I'm really glad that that last 25% is just fantastic. That last 25% was so good, in fact, that I am going to bump it all the way up into the 4-star, which is kind of crazy. That's how good the last section of this book is. The fact that the first 75% is like borderline a 3-star, and that last 25% is so good that it ends up all the way up there in second place right now is a testament to how good the end of that book is. Then we get to the magna opus, I think that's how you say it, of this series, which is Tiamat's Wrath. I have a whole review about this book. It's not only, I'll just go ahead and throw it up here in the 5 stars. It is not only my favorite Expanse book, it is my second favorite book of all time. This book is just absolute perfection when it comes to this series. I don't have a negative thing to say about it. I tried to think of bad things to say about it, and like the worst thing I can think of is that it ended. I just wanted it to keep going. And yeah, like I said, I have a whole review, spoiler filled, if you want to take a look at my full thoughts. But yeah, this book made the journey up until this point so worth it. It was just fantastic. I always want to read books that make me feel the way that this book did, and it just did. Emotional moments, just huge impacts on the world, just so much. It was fantastic. Loved it. So yeah, it is easily in first place for our tier list. Next up, we have Oberon, which is another short story. I really like this one. It was a real change of pace when I read it, and I don't know if maybe that influenced me there, but you know, it really showed how rich and expansive the world outside of the main plots and cast we're following is. There are whole planets and worlds going on, doing things with all kinds of their own political movements and actions and everything that's going through. So yeah, this is a fantastic novella, and it's actually going to go in first place for the novellas, just behind Leviathan Wakes. And it's actually probably pretty close. And even with Strange Dogs, I could maybe, if I really wanted to, put Strange Dogs and Oberon above Leviathan Wakes. It's pretty close. We finished the main novels out with Leviathan Falls. This is a really good ending. You know, I don't know exactly what I wanted out of the ending. I knew it would be hard to end because there's so much going on, but I think in reality, this is a very, very good ending. It's not my favorite in the series. It is not a weak entry by any means. These last couple of books are so good. I'm actually going to have this one in third place, right there, right above Persepolis Rising. You know, the ending to a series this long and this expansive is always going to be difficult, and I really think they did a good job. There are some things that I didn't like, but for the most part, great book. Really liked it. And then we have the last novella, and you know, I think it is probably. It's near the bottom. It is pretty close to being in last place. I'm going to go ahead and put it in last place. It might need to go above Drive and The Butcher of Anderson Station, but for me, this was just a very unnecessary piece in the story. It follows a character that I think a lot of people had questions about and wanted more information about. For me, I just didn't care. I didn't need anything from that character. There are other aspects of the universe at this point in the story that I much would have rather spent time with, and to see some of the ramifications from the ending of the series than what we got here. I mean, it shows a little bit of that, but there's more that I would have wanted. And the character that we get here, you know, it is what it is. It was fine. I liked it. It's still like a good story. The writing is still good. You can, and that's one thing I will say, you can really tell the difference from Leviathan Wakes to Leviathan Falls, the growth of the writers, because there's 2 of them, that they experience in this journey. It's really good. So yeah, overall, that is my ranking of The Expanse. I think I'm going to do one more video about The Expanse, and I'm going to do like a, should you read it? Is it worth reading? Because I don't think it's actually that straightforward of an answer. So that'll probably come out in a week or 2. So look forward to that. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.